Ladies and gentlemen, we are right now live with the Peace from Nigeria. Hello, Peace. How are you today?
I'm good. How are you?
Fine, thank you very much. We have Ghazi Bouzidi from Tunisia, from the
Hello,
XIC
everyone.
Tunis. So, Peace, first of all, thank you very much for accepting our invitation. And as usual, I'm gonna go quick and dispatch the link to everywhere so people can join us. So join us. And meanwhile, I give Ghazi, it's if you can tell us about XIC Tunis.
So yeah, hello everyone. Like I said, صحة شربتكم for the guys who are fasting. This is our second UX Café in its new format, which is like a one guest focus, and we discussed through it like with like UX experts from around the globe, their thoughts, and they share with us their experience, and hopefully we can discuss and grow as a global community. And hopefully today's talk will be enriching, and we can expand from it to greater knowledge, I hope. So yeah, welcome to everyone who's joining us.
So, Peace, you are a designer and open source evangelist. You have a lot of talents, and you come from Nigeria. For those who don't know Nigeria, Nigeria is one of the biggest countries in Africa. It's known for oil, for petrol, let's say. But there are other things about Nigeria. I know that Nigeria is a multicultural country. They speak both French and English. There is a lot of religions. There is Muslims, there are Christians. There is a lot of ethnicities, and they live all in peace, hopefully. And among all that, there is a huge scene of entrepreneurship, of going on, of design. I did see that, Port Harcourt, which is I think it's a small town. How far is it from Lagos?
Port Harcourt is like a 45 minutes flight time from Lagos.
Yeah, and I don't see that they have an XIC club there, and it's really, really active, way more active than our club. It put our club in shame. Yes, Marwan, you can hear that. Ghazi, it put and Richard is really, really. I think I would like also thank Richard a lot.
Yeah, you should give
big shout out for Richard who made this happen. And I think that there are 3 clubs in Nigeria for XIC. So it means that UX is really important in Nigeria.
Yes,
it's really, really important. And if UX is really important, it means that the design scene, the entrepreneur scene is exploding. There is a lot of things going on. I'm going to talk about that with you later, after this suite. Ghazi, what is your idea about Nigeria?
Well, I've been hearing a lot of talk about how they progressed like exponentially in the last years, technology-wise, like in terms of like new technology innovations and all that stuff. Also, you talked about entrepreneurship. I mean, that also something that. Well, I mean, it's something that's happening all over the place, actually, but more specifically, or maybe more intensely over there. I mean, Peace could either confirm or deny this later on, I guess. But I've been hearing a lot of talk actually recently about Nigeria, and it also feels good to know that also other people from our continents are doing really good job in these terms, and hopefully we can also do the same. And why not like expand together and share our experiences together, and hopefully we can learn from each other. So,
Ikeshi Ono Uchi, he says hola. Ikeshi from Lagos, Nigeria. So hola, I think it means hello. I think
Hello, yeah, hola, hello, welcome.
Yeah, welcome. So So how do you greet people usually? Is it hello? Is it what's up? Is it how are you doing? Because I know that there is always a special tense in Nigeria. It's not English, but it's long one we use a lot. Which is
we actually have like a lot of ways to greet people. If you go down to the local language, we have a lot of local languages. Like we have over 500 languages being spoken in Nigeria. But let's say you want to say hi to someone, like in general English, like, hey, what's up? Hi, how you doing? Like just a random hello, hi. But then when you go down to the local language, we actually have a lot. They have your Yoruba, your Igbo, your Hausa, and the rest of them. There are a lot of languages here in Nigeria.
That's good. So yeah. So my other question before we're gonna give you the start to talk about how many designers do you think there is in your hometown compared to
what?
compared to Lagos. But by the way, Lagos is the biggest city in Africa with 20 million people. 20 million people. Tunisia is only 12. So Tunisia, the whole Tunisia can fit in less one city, in the half of the main city.
Lagos does actually have like a lot of people and it's really populated, but it's not actually the most populated city in Nigeria. Though it's really populated and a lot of things are happening there. So if I'm comparing Lagos to Port Harcourt where I live and like the number of designers, I would say for sure they have more designers and more techies down there in Lagos than in Port Harcourt or other cities in Nigeria. But what I would say is that from other cities in Nigeria, like the growth there's actually a very, very considerable amount of growth that's gone or that's happened in the last couple of years. So they're trying to like still catch up with the whole Lagos space, but we have a lot of talent right there in Lagos, and yeah, it's well appreciated as well.
Ghazi, as a UX expert, what would your questions about UX in Nigeria?
I mean, I'm curious, like where when the trend of UX started there. Like for us, for example, if for 4 or 3 years ago you wouldn't even hear or know someone, you don't even understand what a UX designer means. Maybe you can hear it in some like a Google recommendation like UI layout or something, but you never actually hear someone doing that job. It was either part of the graphic designer, which is someone who does typically the visual identity and all that stuff, or the front-end engineer or the front-end developer usually takes care of this job.
What is your question, Ghazi?
I mean, when the trend or when the job of user experience started to really show and the need was expanding, like within companies?
I would say the thing is, over the years, there've been this tremendous growth when it comes to UI UX design over front end. I started out tech in 2017. Actually, that's like 3 years ago. Yeah. So basically, in 2017, it was still like I wouldn't say it was a new direction, but it was still very much at its beginning stage. A lot of people were not really involved. Even those that were actually involved in product design and UX and UI design, most of them actually just focus on UI design and leaving the UX part out of the whole picture. So I would say that in the past 4 to 5 years, that's when the whole UX and UI growth actually started coming up in Nigeria.
Yeah, maybe that's a little bit earlier than us.
Than Tunisia.
Yeah.
I have a question for you, Ghazi. Do you think that in the same space you can have designers who love about shapes, colors, and stuff like that, and about developers who only it's working. This thing is working. I don't care about how it looks. So do you think? I mean, this is possible?
That's a really big issue. I cannot like solve this problem that's been going on in like a sentence, but I mean, you get the picture. Like someone try to convince from like a logical or pragmatic standpoint, and another one try to like convince and reflect his artistic view and his aesthetical like view of the thing. But how can you merge or convince each one of them to meet each other at the middle? So that's something that probably
So
Peace will be
Yeah,
Peace
helping us figure out
will be telling us how to reconcile the guy who is always telling it's beautiful and the other guy telling it's working.
yeah. I
So
think the struggle that we all go through, like as designers and as developers, like it's a constant thing. It's a struggle. So we just
yes.
have to find that point, that balance between both parties.
So as we say always, Peace, stage is yours. You can show the slide and you can enlighten us with how to resolve this, impossible, dilemma.
Oh, okay. Oh, you can still see my screen, right? Or do I still have
Not right now.
No, we can
Okay.
not right now.
Share.
Share it again.
Okay, you should be able to see it now.
We can see it now. Yes, you can see it. If you can switch to the,
Yeah.
yes, excellent. So the stage is yours. I'm gonna disappear me and I'm gonna be with you, and go ahead, please.
Okay. So before I start, I just want to know the demographics of people that are here. So if there's any developer here listening to us right now, can you just like drop a comment, say hi, or drop an emoji or something? I know we have a lot of designers, but I don't know how much developers will have. So if there's any developer in the room, can you like just say hi?
People, please show. If you go, please you have to go back to the window for the slide.
Okay.
I'm not seeing the screen.
Yes. Yeah.
Can you see it now?
Yes.
Yeah. Yes.
Okay, so I know when Karim, I got that right, Karim. Is that the right pronunciation?
Yes, please. Yeah.
Okay. I know when Karim was telling me about the demographics of people that would be on the call today or this stream today, he talked about the different type of designers, graphic designers, UI designers, user researchers, photographers, and the rest of them. So the talk today is basically focused on how we designers can actually create a safe space or a safe working environment for us and the other developers, according to Karim, those that says the thing is functioning and we don't need to make it beautiful. So we'll just jump right in. My name is Peace Ojemeh. A lot of people know me as Perry. That's like a nickname. You can find me on Twitter, Peace_Ojemeh. So let's jump right in. Oftentimes, when we are trying to build projects or during the project development cycle, designers and developers are always in this battle. Either when the designer is delivering the project, or when the developer is trying to replicate the designs that were actually delivered to him or her. You hear a lot of developers say that a design that was created is actually too ambitious for them to actually flesh it out into the development phase, and there are things that need to change. This is not going to work. This has to be like this for us to be able to develop it. And then there's always this conflict between designers and developers. And then because you are a designer, some designers tend to want to make sure that whatever they design should be developed the way they design it, without actually getting to think about the experience the developers will face while trying to develop that. If I'm talking too fast, please just let me know, because I tend to.
I think it's okay. We have people saying hi. There is Yassine Ghanem and there is Bon Natalie. There is also AB and Victor. So I think that coming from you, especially from different locations, I saw a lot of people are retweeting your tweet, in the Twitter. So yeah.
Surprised with the whole interaction with it. So I think the first place to start for us as designers in trying to create a safe space or a safe working environment for us and developers is to first appreciate each other's role. No role is more important than the other in the product development phase. The designers are very important as well as the developers are very important. I don't know if you guys saw this tweet. I think it's a tweet that's been going round for the past couple of days about designers and developers having one designer on the project and one engineer, and then the first guy made a video of how many number of things the developer has to think about, and then all the designer have to do is change the direction, change the location of the logo. And it was really, really crazy. It got a lot of traction, like 9.2K retweets and 28K likes, and then a lot of comments, designers getting offended, developers mocking designers, and then a designer came back and did his own version. It basically just made his own version on how developers just go and use frameworks, or like I think one important part that he missed out here was developers going to Stack Overflow and just lifting codes directly. But then, like, there's always this war between designers and developers that has always been going on. And one thing that we cannot change is that the paths of designers and developers will always keep crossing, and there is no way you can actually move away from that phase of developers and designers working together. So we have to find a way or a safe space for us to actually collaborate, right, and push out very functional products, because the goal here is to push out products that are functional and they are and products that are actually working very well for the users. So the whole point of coming together to build a product is to have something to give to the users for them to be able to use it, and then it's functional for them. So designers and developers, project managers, and anybody involved in a product development phase should be willing and ready to collaborate. And for you to be able to do that, you have to first understand that you have to appreciate the role that every single person is bringing to the table. For you as a team to achieve your goal in trying to push out the product to the market, you have to be able to learn to work together. And that starts from appreciating each and everyone's role. Then you can start seeing scenarios where you all come together and then create a product that is functional. So to create a very functional product to push to the market, first you have to appreciate each other's role, and then you have to learn to work together, because a team that does not work together actually doesn't get to achieve something really great in the end of the day. Now, for designers, how do we get to work, or how do we create a very, very safe collaborative space with developers? We'll start with getting everyone involved from the start to the finish. Now, what I mean is that it's very typical for designers to get the idea of the project and just jump on it. You see a lot of designers going into user research, going into trying to ideate together, but then without adding the developers in that conversation. Now, the good thing about getting developers involved from the start is while you're trying to bring in several ideas together as designers, we know that first of all, we think outside the box and then bring all the information we get outside the box back into the box in trying to create a response to a solution. So while trying to think outside the box, the very first thing that we need to do is that we need to start thinking before doing, and we need to start thinking before talking. And developers need to be involved in this process from the onset. They need to, if they are in the very first set of conversation and they join you in the iteration process, you get to realize that developers will start telling you from onset, what could actually work in the development cycle and what could not work. So as a designer who is trying to involve developers into your very first flow of trying to ideate or create a response to a particular problem, you tend to reduce the whole issue of creating designs that are actually too ambitious and not very, very scalable for development. So it's quite important for us as designers to first, while we're trying to ideate and trying to put everything together, have conversations with designers, organize design sprints, involve everyone from the onset. And once that table is set from the onset, it's quite easy for you to just go on with development process of the product. The next thing that we should understand as designers is we need to understand technical limitations. You get to hear a lot of developers talk about how I keep using the word design is too ambitious, because a lot of developers really get to talk about that. When you go for meetups, and then the very first thing the developer will tell you, or the very first issue that they have with designers, is that designers design interfaces that are quite difficult for them to replicate with code. So as designers, we need to start to learn how to understand technical limitations. There was one project I was supposed to jump on a couple of months ago, and the very first thing the CTO did was he sent me a link to how to understand how Bootstrap works. So it's like, I need to go through this link for me to be able to design anything that they can actually like code. So I actually had to go through the link, and I understood how this works, how that works, or how this should work. So getting that whole knowledge, or that technical knowledge, and knowing what can work and what cannot work, kind of like, it saves you time, and it also saves the team frustration in trying to, the development team frustration in trying to replicate your design and coding it out. So once you get to understand that, oh, there are actually technical limitations to what I'm trying to design, you can think of better way to represent that whole experience you're trying to create in a way that it's development friendly for the developer to actually ride on with development. And then that process also helps you in cutting down the time for development. So let's say you're trying to involve an interaction that is quite difficult for the developer to actually implement, and then you know that that is a limitation, and you cut it down from the onset because you know that that is actually a technical limitation, compared to someone who actually doesn't know that that's a technical limitation. You get to design it and push it to development, and the developers go round and round and round trying to find ways to actually solve. They're kind of like trying to solve it. Like, okay, look at it this way. As a designer, you're trying to create a response to a problem. You're trying to solve a particular problem. You're creating different responses to it. While trying to solve or trying to create a response to the user's problem, you are creating a problem for the developer. That way, you're not trying to put everybody into play. Like when thinking about the experience of the product, first you think about the users, yes, but then you also have to think about the developer experience. And one way you can do that is by understanding technical limitations. Now, people keep asking, is it compulsory for a product designer or UI/UX designer to know how to code? I wouldn't say it's actually compulsory, but a product designer or UI/UX designer should have a knowledge of how code works. That way, it's easier for you to create things that are very scalable development-wise. It's easier for you to create interfaces that is developable. Like, there are interfaces that you create that creates problems for the developer. So without understanding the technicalities around trying to write the code for your design, it kind of makes it very difficult for developers to actually work with you, because you create problems for them, literally. So trying to understand technical limitations is another very important aspect of product development cycle that designers should always take into consideration. The next thing I would say that designers should take into consideration is manage expectation. Now, we talk about involving the development team from the onset. Once the development team is involved from the onset and everybody start talking about the problem, first of all, the developers start appreciating your process of trying to create a better experience for the user. and then you see them thinking about how they themselves can be involved in creating a better experience for the user, while thinking about the limitations they would face in the development process. So that way, you guys have come together and have like a simple source of truth, a single source of expectation. So you don't just wake up one day and then just bring a static design and expect a developer to just work on it and make them feel like they are actually, like you actually left them out of the process. But if they are there from the beginning, the expectations become very unified, and then everybody knows that this is the problem we are solving and this is how we are solving the problem. So it's very easy to boycott misunderstanding, and very easy to boycott problems along the product development phase. The next thing I would say is designers should also learn how to create style guides. One thing with style guides is, yes, it actually helps you as a designer create very, very functional designs, like designs that are actually like uniformed from your first page to your last page. But then it also helps the developer. It tries to help them. It reduces that whole redundant codes, and then try to help them. Once I have a friend, a developer friend, when he wants to start a project, the first thing he asks for is your style guide. Once he gets your style guide, he just codes out everything and then knows that, oh, this is the button, blah, blah, blah. You just have to call these functions and then everything is working very fine. So creating a style guide will also help the development cycle. That way you're trying to reduce or help the experience a developer face while trying to develop the product or the design you just delivered to them. As a designer, one thing that is very common with us is we are very, I won't say proud, but we have the tendency to be very proud. We have the tendency to always want to insist that our designs need to be coded the way they were designed. We really don't want to listen to what the developer is saying, basically. Our own issue is, okay, I've created the design. You as a developer, please replicate it the way it is. We're just so stubborn to actually like think about the fact that, oh, this is actually difficult for the developer to implement. Let's think about a better way, not trying to wash down the experience that you've created, the same experience, but there are several ways to actually replicate that experience. So designers should learn to be flexible, learn to listen, learn to allow the developers talk, learn to know why and why they're trying to say that, okay, this design you're trying to create is actually not functional from the development phase. So you should be very, 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 very flexible as a designer. While trying to create an experience for the user, you also try to create an experience for the developers who are actually going to write the code for your project. The next very, 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 very important thing is document your design properly. So gone are the days where designers, I'm still going to elaborate on this later. Gone are the days where designers design static designs and then push to developers to code. Right now, design tools has made it very, very easy for us to create prototypes, create design documentations for projects. So while working on the project, one way to actually make the work very easy for developers is have a proper documentation for your design. It helps both the developer, the project manager, and every other person who is actually involved in the whole product development phase. So learn to actually write proper documentations for your design. Your call, more like having a very, very concrete explanation of your style guide and how your design works, as well as creating interactive prototypes. Now, something else, like I said earlier, that a lot of these design tools like Figma and XIC are actually doing, that actually helping development process nowadays, is you could easily just create very interactive prototypes. So currently you could do GIFs on Figma, on XD. So try to create prototypes that are actually exactly the way you actually want it to work. If that is not achievable, you can basically just find, I know there are a lot of HTML and CSS animations. If you know that, okay, you already have the animation of how this thing is supposed to work, but then you can't actually do that on Figma or XD. You can basically just find an animation and then share it to the developer and tell them, this is how I actually want this to work. Basically, they actually even just see the HTML and CSS code, so they just need to make like little edits. So try to be very considerate and try to like involve them in the whole process. Try to create interactive prototypes. They should see the way it should work literally after development. Once they know that, okay, this has to work like this, or okay, the button has to work like this. Okay, this is what happens when I hover on this button. This is what happens when I click this drop down. This is what happens when I go to this page. It's quite easy for them to just know that, okay, this is how I need to write my code and this is the direction my code needs to go to. Instead of just giving them static designs and expecting them to create exactly what you want, and then probably just having a call with them and explaining how the interaction should work. But then when they deliver it, you start getting a little bit angry or irritated because they don't give you the exact interactions you want. But forgetting that they are also humans and they can actually forget the interactions that you were trying to explain. So the easiest way to actually make developers get in sync with all your interaction is create very interactive prototypes that actually help them through the development process. And after that, push your deliverables. Your deliverables are not just static designs. Your deliverables are designs. Your deliverables are the style guides. Your deliverable is the documentation for the design. Your deliverable is the prototype. So you actually have like a lot of deliverables to give to the developer who is going to be working on writing the code for that particular project. And then that's actually not where your work ends. You still have to be with the developer and keep communicating with them. The developer might actually have questions along the way, even after all these several deliverables you give to them. They might have questions to want to ask you. Just always be there and always be available for them to just reach out to you. That way, if we try to build this collaborative system between us and developers, we'll find out that the product development cycle, the time for the product development cycle will be optimized very, very properly. And then you find that you start pushing out projects faster than it used to be, because this whole thing helps you prevent the whole back and forth movement of trying to change a design that doesn't work or trying to learn how to develop something that it's not really feasible. So for us to be able to have this seamless development process on products, designers need to learn how to work with developers, basically. So yeah, that's like what I have for you guys today about the collaboration between designers and developers. Thank you.
Wow, let me say now, Peace, that was really straightforward, really quick, and you get to the point. I'm really, really, big fan of this presentation of your skills. Was really perfect because you did, tell about the whole, every little, pain in this job between the developer and the designer. And even Ghazi, he knows that. Because
yes, exactly. Because I used to do. Actually, I've done both of them. So I've been in the both parts of the conflict. So yeah, it was really inclusive and well done. Very, very good job.
First of all, developers and they don't sit together in the same table from the beginning. It's always the developer who is ahead of the project, and then they call the designer, hey, the train is way ahead, you have to catch it. Or the designers call the developer after he have everything done, which is a very bad idea. They don't communicate. We're gonna get to the very important part of the communication. They don't plan. They have no planning. They have no understanding of each others work. Like the designer doesn't understand coding, and the code doesn't understand design. So, and they always ask for impossible things. Impossible.
So if we are to summarize the whole issue, mainly it could be broken down into 2 points, which is communication, proper communication, There isn't.
That's the very first thing, proper communication.
There isn't like a good communication. For example, a whole team of designers and manager could be having meetings and deciding how this app should look like. And then when it's finally done, they will throw it to the developer and say, okay, do this. And he will be, okay, how the hell am I supposed to understand this? Like, why is this like this? He doesn't get it, why all have the decision have been made like this. So what happens in most cases is that developers will start making things up on their own. This most certainly has happened to you. You design something, and then when you send it to the developer, he would make changes. And if you say, why did you make this change? And he would say, I think this way is better. Well, he has no idea why is that way. It doesn't work. So
I'm gonna remind you because I work with your big company about the big diamond battle about who gets the 24 screens. Is it the developer or the designer? This is the biggest issue in the world, and why? The developer going to say, okay, I need to code and have access to the database at the same time. I have testing different, so I need the 2 screens. And the designer said, no, I need, very big 2 screens to design, more comfortable and quicker. So my first question for you is, what is the best way, or at least the way you use efficiently to communicate in a team where there is, developers and the designers involved?
Okay, for me, what has always worked with the several teams I work with is before every start of any project, like ideation or anything goes on, everybody involved in that whole project development phase, the project manager, the engineering manager, the engineers, the front end, the back end, come together and then try to have a conversation around it. So more like a mini design sprint where everybody shows in their own opinions. And during that process, you get to find out that, the designer might be thinking of creating a response in this direction. But then because the developer is there and he or she knows that experience might not actually work from development phase, they try to oppose it. So first of all, having that very first conversation or involving everyone in that first conversation can be very, very important. And after that, you could also try to schedule like calls, or if you're not a team that actually like to jump on calls, you could use management tools like Trello and the rest of them to just manage the communication. But they have to be communication between every stakeholder that is involved in that project for you to actually have like a seamless product development phase. They have to be a communication. So different teams have their different ways of communication. But I know what works effectively for my team is we first have a call, we all ideate, put our ideas together, everybody knows the problem, everybody tries to understand what direction we are going to in trying to create a response to that particular problem. So that way, there's already this thing from the beginning that, okay, this is where we are headed, and this is the process we're trying to use to get out our response to that particular problem.
Okay, thank you. So you tell about the face-to-face meetings, that this is very important.
You can have face-to-face meetings. That if you are living together in like the same locality, or you could actually just basically have calls like this when you actually just have conversations and talk. Then you could also use team management tools like your Trello to track communication.
Yes. So you're talking about face-to-face meetings, and then you can call the people involved also. Is it?
Yeah.
I remind you that it's a very, very good gesture if you are going to work with someone to call him before sending him an email. This is a very important thing. Don't rush your team with emails. Call him first and then send the emails later. The emails, is a follow-up. It's not, to initiate a project. You did talk about Trello. We also use Trello. People, another lot of people that don't use it. And if we see at your right, we have Nesreen who says, bonsoir and merci. And Isra, Amri says it's so clear. Ikeshi says merci. Yeah. And Nasreen says great. Kingsley, awesome presentation, Peace. Congrats. And Victor Ibrahim, he says, well done, Peace.
Thank you. I think we should take questions, basically, like from the audience. If anyone has any questions to ask?
Yes.
Do you have a question, Ghazi?
Well, maybe like an insight. We talked earlier about the communication, but also the second biggest thing is understanding of each other's job. Like, how does the other do the job? Like, what frustrates him? Like, what are the things that he does? His routine. How did he develop kind of an empathy with the other one's job? This is like one thing maybe could also be helpful. Also, you mentioned the technical.
I think that the point too is like developer doesn't make video montage. The developer doesn't hack your girlfriend's Facebook account.
Exactly.
No. The designer designs interfaces and designs logos. He doesn't
This is how developer imagine designers like.
Yeah, he is not really Picasso in drawing. A designer is not someone who can make the plans for your house. So this is understanding how the other people work. A designer does have a scope of work, which is he does that, and he does it in a way. You don't really come to the designer and give him like you have a piece of paper, and then do something and say, okay, designer, this is how I want the thing to be. No. Designers, we have to tell him about the idea, and he's going to transform your idea into a logo or a design. You don't have really to make like a doodle and tell him, I want to see this in the screen. And you don't go to the developer and tell him, okay, developer, I want you to make a program that is faster and bigger and better than Facebook. It doesn't work that way. You have to tell him, what is your objective? What is your needs for the application? This is the very crucial point of understanding limitation and scope of work of each job.
Yeah, I've seen it also as a joke in a video while developer is doing like a heck of a job and drinking coffee and making up big codes and all that stuff, and the designer is figuring out whether this position is better, or like switching by 1 pixel and making sure that it is centered. Like, I mean, this is clearly a very misunderstood position of a designer that is actually very not true.
I think everything starts from involving developers from the onset, because once a developer is involved in that first conversation where you start talking about the experience and talking about the problem and talking about ideating and bringing in different things from outside the box into the box, they tend to understand really what your role is on that team, and they tend to appreciate it. So
they get to see the process and actually understand how all of that has been made, rather than having it as a final result. You talked about earlier the technical limitations. There is also one thing that often designers neglect, which is the business constraints, or like the budget limitations. This is something that we don't speak often about. It is sometimes we probably get maybe it's feasible, like technically wise. It's not like for example, the developer could do it, but it would take the development team, for example, 5 months to do it, while we have to deliver the project in 3 months. This is clearly out of the timeline or the resources that we have allowed the project to take. So this is why a designer has not only has to understand like the technical limitations, which is like front end stuff, but also business constraints, like how this thing could be efficient cost-wise. For example, if you are building an MVP, you would think of making the least possible, making the product less. Less cost possible.
Yeah, this is a very good question. Peace, when you are dealing with an MVP or a big project or small project, especially MVP, you know that this is going to be a temporary project. Do you deal the design the same way you are dealing with a project that is that is complete and final?
I would say that the process of trying to build out an MVP is actually not so different from like the main project itself, because obviously your very first goal of trying to push out an MVP is trying to understand how the users will react to that particular product you're trying to build. So you have to put in as much effort as possible, even if it has to be minimal, to push out something that you know that, okay, once this gets to the market, I could easily get the feedback I need from the users. So you actually have to put in a lot of effort in still trying to build out the MVP. Because
Ghazi, as you know, if you have an MVP and you have to deliver to the customers, does developers fake things behind a good design? Okay, I'm gonna tell you the situation. You are the last minute. The customer is here, and you have to present the product. The designer did an awesome job. He has everything ready. As a developer, how do you deal with that? Do you fake some stuff? Do you simulate? How do you do it?
You mean as I pitch the work to the client?
Yeah, the customer. Yeah.
For example, of course, it all happened. It must have happened to all of us. When you have something not working, you pretend, okay, must be a glitch or something. I will have the developer checking it like later.
I mean, this is a case which is really the designers take the credit for, because he is if the designer doesn't finish the job, the project won't the customer won't see anything, but the developer can still fake the project somehow.
Yeah, in some cases also client mistake the prototype for a final work. they would see prototype and they would say, okay, it's finished, let's wrap this up. And you'd say, oh man, it's only a prototype, we just have to take 3 more months to develop it, and he will have a heart attack and die.
So I have a big question for you, and then we're gonna get back to Ghazi. For your piece, in Nigeria, are developers and designers paid equally, or there is a difference?
Oh, that's a great question.
Okay, that's very tricky and very nice.
I'm gonna tell you before you answer. In Tunisia, developers are paid way more than designers.
Yes.
So okay,
lots more. Like
yeah, I think
it's not even.
I think it's the same thing down here. I remember talking to someone a couple of weeks ago. So he posted like different job offers: front-end developer, full stack, back-end, and product designer. I think the front-end developer had like, I think $1,000, then the full stack was like 1.5 or so, and then the designer was like $500, like the product designer. And I'm like, why is the front-end developer getting like 1,000 and then the product designer is getting $500? Like, so it's I think it's a common thing, but I think that basically still takes us back to the whole ideation that people haven't actually gotten to appreciate the work that designers do. I think that's where it starts from, because once an organization start appreciating the work that designers do, they actually tend to put in a lot of funds into it. But once they don't actually understand or appreciate what a designer does, if they just feel like it's basically just trying to, like that video, trying to think of a place, the right position to place the logo, then they basically just like feel free to give a designer any price they feel like giving them, because they feel like they're not actually putting in a lot of effort in trying to make that product work. So once people start understanding the kind of work and the amount of work it takes to actually designing a product from the ideation down to the finished high fidelity prototype, then it's quite easy for them to actually like appreciate what designers do and then like get to increase the payroll designer.
Okay. Before we go, I'm gonna get to you back to the Ghazi just a minute. There is Ibim Victor. First of all, thanks to Ruth Igaga, who says that, okay, the presenter is funny. I think she's talking about me. Thank you very much. Yeah, I think I'm funny today. And we have a long question for you before we get back to Ghazi from Ibim Victor, and he says, I had an issue in a project last year. The designs I made can be developed, but the developer said I can't. Now I have seen the pattern and style being used. Is it right to say some developers can't really code the designs? And this is, yeah, for both of you. Let's start with Peace, and then I'll get back to Ghazi.
Yeah. So, like you made a reference of someone trying to tell a developer to develop something like Facebook or something faster, right? And then you are trying to tell, Facebook has a very large team of developers, right? They have so many developers trying to work on a particular project, and you're trying to tell one developer to come up with that whole platform. It's quite ambitious to ask. So I would say that not all developers, the same way that when it comes to designs, there are kind of like designers who are a lot better in user experience design than in UI. It's also the same way that there are developers who have their strength in some certain areas, but then don't really have a lot of strength in that particular area. So when a developer tells you that the design is not feasible, it doesn't really mean that that design cannot literally be coded at all. That they cannot code it. So you have to understand the type of developer you have on a particular platform and the skill that person actually has to actually bring to that development phase. Once you understand that, then you start understanding why the person have certain kind of constraints to certain type of requests that you make from design.
Okay, Ghazi, did you ever? Thank you very much, Peace. Did you ever have designers that you can't, that you can't, graph any code to that?
I mean, this is also to get back on the point of communication from the start. If you don't have the design being checked or your developer perspective on the design from early stages of the design, I mean, this could be the result of the developer not being able to do it. Even so, maybe he could actually. Maybe if he tried enough or really looked into it, maybe he could do it. But if you would just give him this big job with him having no idea how to approach it, the safe decision would be for him to say that he's not been able to do it. Maybe in reality, if he could try to learn it or break it down.
The question is, if you have an interface that is ready, like a designer is ready, is it always possible to get a code for that design, or there are sometimes that you can say no, or this is impossible, or it doesn't work?
I mean, of course, there could be some design that couldn't be done with the technology we have, but also we can always adapt. We can always modify some things or rearrange some components that we have on the page to make it work. Probably not with the way we did it in the first time. That could possibly also happen. Of course, with depends on the developer that we have working with us. Maybe the developer that we have working with us right now, he couldn't do it, but someone else else could do it.
I think it's a communication and planning and design issue for sure, for sure. So Rath has a question as well. She said, so we know for a fact now that designers are not appreciated. How do you correct this in the future? I mean, what way does stand up for themselves in the company?
I mean, Okay.
I think that the best way for a company to stand up is to make the designers of your daughters of the big managers' birthday cards. So that's gonna be easy. No. Let's see with Peace and then with the Khazi.
Okay, I would say basically I know I mentioned this before. Everything still boils down to conversations and communication. Um, Before developers started getting the traction they are currently getting, there were a lot of conversations around development. There were a lot of conferences, a lot of webinars, a lot of articles around development and how development works. I feel like for design, we've actually not made enough effort in trying to communicate what we do with people, because you tend to realize that when you properly have a conversation with someone and properly explain what you do as a designer, it's kind of like totally different from what they know before they start having that conversation with you. So I think everything still boils down to trying to have these conversations, trying to have these communications. If you are on a team of developers that don't really understand or appreciate design, all you need to do from day one is try to involve them in your design process. Try to make them understand why your role is actually very important in the product development phase. Once they start seeing that, then they start appreciating you more than just being a designer who is trying to fix a logo within a certain frame of pixels or trying to like choose colors and balance.
Thank you, Peace. Ghazi?
Okay. I think some of it has to do with also the society level of education on that job, maybe, because I think it's a little bit snowballing from the graphic design work, which is like a little bit underappreciated also, because I don't know if you have this also, Piece, but in some cases we have some designers who would actually do a logo for like 50 dinars, which is like insanely cheap, which is basically nothing, but
five USD.
Exactly. But for example, in the USA, they don't have this issue, or they are maybe a little bit ahead into this process of like people starting being aware that a logo, for example, is very important to the business and could actually like cost like big bucks to make it. But I don't know, if you think about it, it's crazy because for example, when in the case of making buildings, like big buildings, you don't have architecture getting less paid than the one who builds the building. You cannot even imagine that. Whether it's the case in the digital products, maybe because the level of maturity of the work, it's not there yet. But I think as a group of designers, as a designer community, we have to figure out solutions to alleviate this, or to resolve this issue. Well, maybe it could be like different in different societies, but I think the guidelines should be pretty much the same, because I think it's the same case with you guys. What do you think about this?
I
think sorry, I'm gonna go with the point which you discussed in a previous workshop, is that the first thing about any employee in any company is branding. If you are a designer, you have a portfolio. If you know how to communicate, that's gonna count as well. So some designers, they are not good at communicating. They don't have portfolios to show to people, and so they don't stand for themselves in a company. So this is very important before the privileges of the company between designer and the developer is you have to work out yourself with the personal branding. You have to be like Peace, very active in social media that counts, like Twitter. You have to have your own portfolio. Peace have a website, and when Peace is gonna get into a company, she's gonna be by default, instantly appreciated because she did work, her branding in a way she's gonna get the attention and the respect of everybody in the company before she gets into the building.
Yeah, I see the point, Karim, but I think the branding or good communication is a way to distinguish yourself among other designers. But if the problem is for all designers, you couldn't just, for example, if all other designers are getting paid $1,000 per month, you couldn't ask for $10,000, even if you do insane good communications.
Ghazi, here we are talking about branding. It doesn't count. The money doesn't count. It's about
that's a way to distinguish yourself, or getting like I don't know, being out there more than others. That's for sure a good thing. But payment wise, I think that's a whole other issue.
She is not asking about the salary. She is the question was about the status of designers inside the company. So
sorry, I thought you were.
Peace, what do you think about this? What do you think about branding? What do you think having portfolio and being a good communicator?
I think
it's for sure
one very important skill a designer needs to have is good communication. After good communication, you need to have good documentation skills, which I'm still trying to battle with as a designer. So you need to know how to communicate, because you're basically going to be like that concealer in the team. You are the one that is thinking about the users, and you're the one still thinking about the developers. So you basically need to understand how to bring the developer, bring the project manager, and bring everybody involved in the project development into the space or direction that you think that you are taking, or you're trying to build a response from. So you need to actually have good communication skills. And it's also very good to also have like good branding and good stand, which I would still say I don't think I've had any talk around design and I don't mention getting to work on actual projects. So some designers just start learning about design and they feel like they have enough theoretical knowledge to just jump into working for organizations and getting paid really, really big. They tend to jump that process of practicing. The thing about design is what you learn in theory is actually almost different from the actual practice. Like when you learn UX, you listen to US talks and read US books, it seems fun and a little bit boring, but it really doesn't seem as difficult as it is like when you're actually practicing it. So you actually need to learn how to practice, and you have to look for projects to learn on. So that's why I always advise people or designers who are just coming into the space. It's actually very good for you to do the theoretical work, but you need to learn practical. Like you need to have practical experience in designing.
Exactly.
Okay.
Organization try to volunteer, contribute to open source projects, and try to have real life experience with actually working on real life projects with friend members of a team. Then that way it's more effective for you to actually work in an organization that you're actually getting paid or working in a very structured environment.
Okay. We have a comment from Isra Amri, and she say that they know it's important, but they don't appreciate the hard work that need to be done to create a logo. The problem that always the design is related to aesthetic, but in reality, functionality is way more important. And to find a solution is need to much hard work. So basically, she's saying that design is not about something that it looks really aesthetic, but always something that is functional, that something which is useful.
I personally do not agree with that, because design is solving a pragmatic problem. It's not like something that is purely aesthetical or
no. She is saying that. She is saying that what she's saying, design is to resolve an issue. It's not aesthetic.
Oh yeah, sure, of course.
Okay, what do you think, Peace, about this?
I'm still trying to get the point of what
I'm gonna explain you. She's saying that design is not something that looks good, as much as it does found a solution to an issue, a problem.
Yeah, that's not how I understood the question.
Peace,
design
yes.
is not focused on function. I would say the easiest way I can explain design from art is with art. Art is about adding a lot of things to make something beautiful and attractive. But with design is about removing things to draw people straight to your point. So you're trying to like be as simple and as functional as possible. That's like almost like the difficult part of design, where you try to ideate, try to go outside the box, and then streamline everything that you've gotten down into like a response to a particular problem. So design is about functionality, design is about usability. It's still also about like the way it looks, but like that's not like the very first goal of design.
Yeah. For example, if you are making
for example, Ghazi, for example, when you design a T-shirt, it's not like you're gonna design a logo. What kind of aspects you're gonna have in consideration when designing a logo that is gonna be printed later?
Well, I'm honestly not a specialist in logo design, but you have to surely have to always think of how the logo will be used. I mean, in its final form. For example, you don't present a logo just in like a screen with a black background. Of course, that's how will you do it. But to the client, you have always to put it into context and present it how it would look in real life. For example, if you're making a logo for a delivery company, you would make a logo on a car, for example, or a van to show how it would look in real life. Or if you're making a logo for an agency, travel agency, for example, you make it in front of a store or at a glass door or something to show how it would appear in real life to get for the client to get a better perspective.
Peace, when you design, when you have designs for a small company, and that, for example, they're going to use for T-shirts or they're going to be printed in surfaces on wood, do you take in consideration that when you're designing the project?
Yeah, you actually have to know, like for logos, I see a lot of graphics designers making logos that you can actually have on a web page, like the way this logo is structured, basically. So you need to understand why that client need that particular design deliverable from you. So once you understand, like, okay, this is what the client wants to do, this is what the client wants to achieve. So it's basically like knowing the problem you're trying to solve and then trying to create a response to that particular problem. But you have to put into consideration like everything. And that's what he was trying to say, that while you're trying to design like a t-shirt or like you're trying to brand for an organization, you know that the organization is obviously going to use the visual identity on probably their company card, their t-shirt, their letterhead, their website. So you basically just create use cases for these different scenarios so that they see how that particular visual identity actually works on like the different scenarios.
Okay, Abby Gift, she says that through that, the theory is not always equal to practice in design.
Yeah, practice is reality basically, and theory is like dreaming, because once you come into reality, it becomes like you really be shocked how much effort you have to put into practice the little theoretical knowledge that you actually gain. So you actually need to learn or need to actually practice design to be able to say that you are a designer, because you can't actually live off of theoretical knowledge. That's going to be really difficult in your journey.
It's a so big question that it did cover, Ghazi. You can see Ghazi, he is, behind the question. So Ojemeh, sorry if I'm not pronouncing your name correctly, Tushukuyu, Christian, he said, it is necessary for every designer to understand that the framework used by developers to replicate every design or prototype built by them. Sometimes front-end developers find it difficult to replicate a design, not only because they can't, but also because the features of some designs doesn't even exist on the selected framework. Example, Flutter, React, and Android Studio issues like this should be addressed even before the commencement of the project. Communication is the key. Wow.
Yeah, that
Wow.
leads to like the second point where we talked about like trying to understand technical limitations. So you literally don't know how to. You literally shouldn't. Basically, you must not know how to code as a designer, but as a product designer or UI/UX designer, you should have an understanding of how code works. You should be able to picture how that your design will actually like be coded out of and stuff. So basically trying to read documentations around development and trying to understand the constraints around the particular language they're using or the particular framework they're using is actually like a very, very important thing as a designer to learn. You could also like try to have conversations with developers on that as well to have like a broader understanding of how it works.
So this question is for Ghazi. I think developers should give the designer heads up on a particular language she intends to use and the limitation of the language regarding designs. It's saying about communication and understanding the job of each other, the limitation of each other.
Well, not particularly languages, I would say, rather
technology.
than maybe
he meant
maybe more.
He meant technology. He doesn't mean language. Language means technology in this context.
Yeah, but I think he meant like whether the developer will be doing this on, for example, Angular or React or whatever framework he's using. But I don't really think that is important because the concept of all of those are pretty much the same, which is like a component-based architecture, which means that you would use like a set of components, reusable components, to be distributed around the screen, and also it would be very useful or helpful for a developer to reuse these components in different screen to make his life easier, so he doesn't have to make up a different, for example, use the same header or the same like navigation menu, the same buttons. So he would only have to make these components once and then arrange them across the screen. Also, the thing that is not probably designers do not think about this often is the size of the screen. What size of screen that is most likely to be used for the design? Because for developers, for designers, they mostly have like big screens on which they make the design like a big iMac screen or whatever screen they are using. But in reality, most of the users would be using this product on a laptop or like a mobile interface. So this also has to be considered from the beginning, because most people would do a design for a big screen. Then the client would ask, for example, for a responsive like a different screens, and they would struggle to translate this into a smaller screen. So it would possibly create an issue, and they would have to cut stuff from the design. And so yeah, I think it mostly has to do with
Peace, as a designer, do you have insights when you communicate with the developer which technology is going to be using, and does that affect the design itself?
Okay, I'll first address what he said about like having different screen sizes. So it's actually one of the very important things to do while trying to create let's say you're trying to create a web platform, right? Possibly that web platform will be accessed to the phone. So yeah, you have to create like responsive designs, the desktop, the phone, even your mobile designs. There are phones, there are persons still using like the very, very small screens like the iPhone 6 and the 6X. You literally have to create like put the users into perspective and create designs on different screens. You could have the iPad both horizontal and vertical.
Usually they have 3 like different versions.
Yeah, so you just use like varieties of frames and then try to create responsive designs before you deliver it to the developers. I forgot your question. Can
The
you
language,
repeat?
which language?
My question was: do you have, when you communicate with the developers, do you have insights about the technology he is using, and does that affect the design?
Yeah, it does. Like I mentioned, one of the projects I worked on like a couple of months ago. Once I got on the project, the engineering manager sent me a link to actually study Bootstrap. So basically, he was like, "This is the framework. This is what we are using. So you actually have to understand how it works, so that you can create designs that are actually like feasible for you to develop." So I had to go through the whole documentation and understood like, okay, these are the constraints here. These are the type of animations that can be done. So it kind of like structured the way I thought about the design. So if you have an idea of how developer is actually going to code out your design, it's easy for you to just like know the constraints and the limitations you have to put in your design. And that's why communication is actually very important from the onset. So once you are trying to like create an experience or create a response, the developer will by default, because he knows that he's going to be the one to develop it, tell you what will work and what will not work. And that's where you now start having this whole ideation process on how to actually rethink that response that you're trying to create and then create something that you can work with.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
The
Emmanuel Omole, who is saying hello by the thumbs up, is really appreciating the life. So my of you and everyone's gonna take 2 minutes for the do to give more confidence to each other. I mean, designers to the developer and developer to designer. How are you going to build this kind of trust between both of you? Let's start with Peace.
We lost you from the onset. We didn't really hear.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Your voice wasn't very
My
clear.
question was how are you going? How do you usually build the trust and the trust between the developer and the designer?
I think for me,
Because
everything boils down to
because last year IxDA last year a theme was about trust, so it's very important that in design. So go ahead.
Everything actually boils down to communication. Once you start communicating, it's basically just like friendship, right? Once there's this seamless communication between you and your friend, there's basically always this trust you have around them, because you feel like, okay, this person is open with me and I'm open with this person. There's just this trust. So that's the same way it works with development teams. Once designers build this strong communication channel with the developers, there's always this trust. There's always this issue of when a developer runs into problem, the very first person the developer is thinking of contacting is you, the designer, for you guys to just brainstorm and think of like a way to actually like create a response to that particular problem he or her is facing. So everything for me boils down to communication. How well can you communicate with the people you are working with? That's how much trust that can be brought to the table.
Thank you. What about you, Ghazi?
Well, I think trust is quite a big word, because trust is something that you gain over time. It's not that something you would instantly have, but most of it has to be broken. I mean, I've said this before. It's mostly about empathy and being able to understand and get in the shoes of the other person and try to figure out how they do their work, and try to understand their problems, so you would know how to get around those and make the life of each other easier. And And also, of course, I forgot what I was about to say. So yeah, mostly it's about that. It's understanding each other's job and try to keep each other informed on how well the other person is do, or how far has he progressed in his job. And yeah, the keyword is communication, I guess.
Yeah,
And
I think
also,
that the
and
Ten
also
Commandments.
one more point is to try to explain from with really try to explain things, because people get really frustrated when they do things they do not understand. For example, if a developer do something and he say, why did the designer do it like this, he would get like frustrated and then annoyed. And if a developer, for example, would respond, this is how it is, the way it has to be, like this is probably not fair for the developer. You should try to explain your thought process and how did you make the decision, and most likely your decision has to be valid on like reasons, not just okay, I think this way is better. This is not a response that usually convince people. Try to use like arguments and so real technical and like how would I say this, scientific explanations.
Okay, I think if you go back, the 10 Commandments that that portrayed today by Peace, I make a very good recipe for trust in any company, in any circumstance, communication, planning, talking with other face-to-face communication. Yes, go ahead. Yes, please.
Slide. I think that's a link. That's a link to my slide.
Oh, thank you very much. Okay, I'm gonna. Oh, it's in Figma. Okay, this is.
Like
we already saw that. The eye of a designer.
Yeah, this is. It's in cloud. It's a Figma. It's very nice.
Yeah, actually, Figma is getting. It's getting quite popular.
Yeah, I guess because it's web based and it's easily accessible to like everybody. So.
Yeah, and they are really advanced on the like real time collaboration thing.
Yeah, and then
that is their main strength, I think.
Yeah, I think I think that we did really, even with 1 hour 30, almost 1 hour 30, we did scratch the surface of this kind of debate. Developers, but I think that Peace did really explain it in depth, user style, communication, and then push and deliver, create very intuitive prototypes, document design properly. This is one very lazy habit of both developers and designers. Making documentation for something. This is a very common and very lazy. Very, I know. I myself,
why do you think that? Why do you think that, Abdelkarim? Why do you think we hate to do this?
No, I think that it's because the same thing. If there is always one developer and there is always one designer, he has to do the whole job. Like right now in XIC, we have, by the way, we are preparing an XIC, gathering all XIC in Africa. It's going to be in June. It's going to be a huge online event. It's funny. So I am the project manager, but at the same, I have to take care of, communicate with the people and create the Trello board, and then remind people, and then imagine the event format, and then communicate it. So, and the small tasks, like like for example, Trello, there is a whole job called planner. The planner is someone the project planner is someone who does, works on the planning. And communication manager is someone that wants communication. A lot of times we found that, companies or projects, they always have one guy do the whole scope of work. Like Ghazi, what do you think about the word? What do you think about the word full stack developer?
I mean, I don't want to say curses, but it doesn't make sense to politely say that.
and Peace, what do you think about people when they think the designer that the graphic design does the motion design, does the design of objects, and does the design of houses, and does the design of applications? What do you think about that?
I think that is very unrealistic imagination that one person has like every single skill. Like no designer is actually how do I put it? What's the word? Like have all design skills from graphics to motion to architecture to user experience to user research. It's not a one person. It's not a one person.
Yes, you couldn't possibly have the time to be good at all this. It's not humanly possible. Let's just say that.
Fragmented idea of them, but like having everything like as a focus, it's quite unrealistic.
Okay, before we finish, I would thank you again, Pete. I would thank you also, Ghazi. We have the chance to have a designer and a developer, so we have it was a small debate. I want you, Pete, before we finish this wonderful live, to tell me a little about your hometown, your Port Harcourt.
Port Harcourt is actually okay. So for me, I'm actually from a state called Delta.
Mm-hmm.
So I actually went to Port Harcourt to school. I schooled in Port Harcourt. Like my university education was in Port Harcourt. What I can say about Port Harcourt, the very first thing that comes to my mind when someone says I should tell them about Port Harcourt is we have very good taste in food. There's this dish we call bole, roasted plantain and fish and then sauce. That's like if you come to Port Harcourt without eating that dish, it's like you actually never came to Port Harcourt. Please let me know. We need to make provision for you to actually have a taste of bole. So yeah, Port Harcourt it's fun. It's quite a little bit more. It's quiet compared to Lagos. It's not as noisy as Lagos. It's not as populated as Lagos, but it's cool. It's actually a very, very nice city to live in. Though it can be rough. A lot of people get scared of how rough the city is, but then it's actually like a very calm place to actually live in. I would rather personally live in Port Harcourt than live in Lagos.
Okay. How is the startup scene in there?
In Port Harcourt? I would say it's not as great as Lagos, but I think they are coming up gradually. These things take time. And one big issue I feel like Port Harcourt is facing is whenever someone like a developer, a designer, or an entrepreneur just gets to a certain level in their career, they tend to relocate to Lagos. So they kind of like to them and then they move to Lagos, trying to like reduce the whole talent back there in Port Harcourt. But I think the tech ecosystem in Port Harcourt is also like growing really fast.
Yes. So the same city has different names. I just figured out that. So I think that the Port Harcourt should be old English name, and it has a lot of other other names. It has like I'm checking Wikipedia. It's called Port Harcourt and Equerry and Pidgin, which is and Igbo. So can you explain us why there is so names for one city?
Can you share?
I'm having the impression that she just discovered that.
Okay, here can you see Wikipedia?
There's like a general. The state is actually called Rivers State. Port Harcourt is like city inside Rivers State. In Rivers State, there are so many cities. You have Boni, you have Choba, you have Alakaya. So like Port Harcourt is kind of like a city, like the capital city of Rivers State in general. So it's possible to have like several towns and villages around the state.
But I thought you are living in what is its name in Port Harcourt.
Yeah. I stay in Port Harcourt, but currently because of the whole outbreak of Corona, I've been in Lagos for a while. I was stuck here where they actually closed down the border, so I couldn't travel. So I've been in Lagos for a while.
Peace Ojemeh. Thank you very much. Your presentation, your keynote was amazing. And you did summarize the whole struggle between the developers and designers. And we did discuss it with Ghazi, who is the developer. We thank you a lot. Yeah, I know. The developer wants developer for life. You know that.
Yes. I mean, that's kind of true, yeah.
And also, Peace also is into open source, which is I'm also in open source. I've been open source for almost 20 years now.
Wow.
Yes, yeah.
I mean, a developer who doesn't open or who doesn't believe in open source, for me, actually, he's not a developer.
So they're gonna be less than 80% of the developer. Right now, if I share the screen with you, you're gonna see that. Okay, it's not. If I share with you my screen real quick, I'm gonna show you that most of. If you can see that, okay, I'm already in your Discord.
Oh
here.
Yeah.
And you're gonna see that all the tools I'm using, besides some exceptions, are all open source. I have XSpace, I have GIMP, I have FileZilla.
Wow.
I have Audacity and Handbrake. So I'm using a lot,
it doesn't count. You don't have like an open source operating system. You have Windows.
Okay. This is my gaming. This is my gaming laptop. My main laptop is having Ubuntu.
Oh.
I have a MacBook with Ubuntu on it. Not only Ubuntu, it's a flavor of Ubuntu. It's called the Elementary OS, which is a very nice, elegant, flavor of Ubuntu. It's called. It's very nice. It has a very, very nice user experience. So even in my MacBook, I have, because I can't use Mac OS. I can't.
So I mean, honestly, I'm not a really big fan of the Apple whole ecosystem, but honestly, user experience wise, they are the best, honestly.
I know. No, but when you have been using Linux for over 20 years, really, and you see you can't compile all the applications because macOS has limitation on compiling open source. I mean, there is nothing that you can compare to a very decent Linux distro. Ubuntu, Slackware, Debian, they are the best. It's easy because I can't. The real pleasure with open source that you can create your own environment by compiling the software you need the most, and having a very, very, very nice shell that can do everything with a shell. So thank you very much, Peace.
This streaming section, is it going to go off after this, or is it going to be like saved where people could just, because a lot of people were asking me if they could watch the video like later.
Yes, you could. It's the same link.
Yeah, same link, and it's gonna be also uploaded later to YouTube.
Oh, okay.
We're gonna have more and more events, so don't worry about that.
Awesome.
Peace. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. It has been a very nice, online workshop. We did a lot. Talk about a lot about designs and developers. I'm really impressed. I'm really impressed with the Peace. Really, explain this in 10 simple points. It was very efficient. It was very simple. It was very quick. Yeah.
Thank you.
Congrats, Peace. That was one of the best, keynotes we have in this workshop. I think that Ghazi also agreed about that.
Yes, of course.
And
thank you, Karim. Thank you, Peace, for being with us tonight. Hopefully.
And thank you, Richard, who did, Richard did, the advice to connect Peace the first, and he was right. I know why. No. Our weekly online event is always Thursday at 10 p.m. Tunis time, 9 p.m. GMT, and everybody is welcome. Today we did have a lot of people from Nigeria. We are very thankful to them all. Thank to everybody who is watching us online. And IxDA Tunis is preparing a huge UX African event very soon. So stay tuned. And thank you very much. Thanks to the team. Ghazi, Nasreen, Marwan, Meher, Munji, Malek, and thanks to Peace, thanks to Risha. So all the XIC chapters in Africa. And see you next week. See you very soon. And keep in touch. We are on Slack. We are on WhatsApp. And thank you very much. And see you next week.
All right. Thank you, guys.
See you guys.
Yeah.
Bye-bye.